Okay, moving on to lesson number 5. This lesson is kind of long. I'll try and get through it until stop telling funny stories, but funny stories are makes it good, so we'll see what happens. Lesson 5, strings. Strings, contrary to what you might think, are not a primitive data type. Strings all derive themselves from the string class. So anytime you use a string, you are using...
Can you just unlock and then I'll just sign it?
You're using a reference object and, a reference variable. So that's a portion of that object that the string comes from. And that's why when you look at the difference in terms of declaring a string variable, you're going to have a capital letter instead of a regular one. Sorry, I had to fix one thing. Okay, should be good now. You can see that here. When we use the string class, we're going to capitalize the S. Anytime we bring a string into our program, it's a capital S instead of a lowercase. That's because it's not a primitive type. Now, there's a lot more information here trying to understand the basis behind using that reference variable as opposed to a primitive variable. I'm not going to go too far into it because in the grand scheme of things, it's not the end of the world if you don't 100% gather it. You can still use a string either way you want to. And you can see my examples here. The string with a capital letter, and then our primitive variables all have lowercase. Okay? Actually declaring that variable, you can see an example of it here. We have the name of our class here. We have our main method here, and then we are declaring our string called greeting, and we're assigning it a value of null. Null just mean it doesn't refer to any specific part of that object yet. So we have a string object. We're accessing it to use a string, but we just want to have a reference point. It's not actually pulling any data out. So the string greeting is actually null, which means it has no reference as of yet. So this line of code right here, if we print it out, system.out.print greeting, the value of greeting is null, and that's what it'll print null. Okay, it's not printing null as a string, it's printing null as a keyword, meaning no reference yet. Okay, there's two ways we can that we can declare string variables. The first one is to declare directly from the object. Okay, and this is an example. We're going to get more into grabbing parts of objects and using them, but for now, this is what it'll look like. So we create a string called greeting, and then we say greeting equals new string, and the value of that is hello. This is if we want to create it as a object of the class, of the string class. All right? If we want to just create a string literal, which just means it's just going to create the string without referencing the object directly, we have greeting equals hello. All right? And we'd have string in front of that, and you can see that all of that down here. What is happening in the code below? So we have our class name, we have our main method, we have a string literal called string greeting equals hello, and then we have a bunch of extra stuff. Get class, cur class, super class, parent class. Okay? That's explained all through here. Okay, so we have a string class. Inside that string, we have these methods that we can use. Inside that object, the string object, we have the methods index of, substring, length, compared to. All right? Inside the object, we also have equals and toString. We reference that area. The string object now becomes hello, and the variable of it would be a greeting or whatever you want to call it. Okay? In the end, this is rather difficult to understand, and we're not going heavily into objects as of yet. It's fine if you just accept the fact that when we make strings, we're creating them from the string object. Okay? methods that you can use within those strings. I think you would remember this from Python, and this is just the string index. Any string holds, and every character in that string holds a numerical value based on the index. Okay, the index starts at 0 and then just keeps counting up until it reaches the end. Okay, so when we look at this as a test, each one of these characters holds an index value, including the spaces, throughout. All right, the first character in the string is at index point 0, and the last character length, when referencing it, when you reference the last character, you can reference it as spot 13 or as spot -1, because it kind of wraps it around. So when you reference it as -1, it's automatically going to grab whatever the last item in that string is. Okay, and that's part of the reason we have to add +1 anytime we're making it part of a field or a grouping. And I think you might remember that from Python. Okay, so here's the methods that we're going to go through and you'll have to be able to use. We have int length, substring, index of, compared to, Boolean equals. I'm not going to read them right now. I have examples of them in there, and these ones can be a touch confusing to understand. Okay, so I have them right here. If we go with, I'm just going to do them one grouping at a time. So I'm going to go and comment this out. If I run this program right now, it's going to give me 14 and 11. So that's what the dot length method does. It gives you an exact count starting with the first place at 1. It's not an index, so it doesn't start at 0. It tells you how many, as a human being adding numbers, it tells you how many characters are in this string. So when you count it, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and it returns 14. Message 2 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and it returns 11. That's what dot length is going to do. It's going to show the total number of items. So you have to remember that when you use the dot length method, what you're going to return is an integer. You're not going to get a string, you're going to return an integer. All right? Now, substring. And this says this somewhere in this lesson, but strings are immutable, which means you can't change them. When you assign a value to a string, that's its value forever. If you're going to change that string later on in the program, you are basically creating a new string, okay? And that's how we do that by using substring. And substring can use the index to start at or print out or give a range of that string to print out. So when we print out these 2 lines of code, you can see that it just prints the first 3 characters. So when I look, it goes 0 to 3. So now we count 0, 1, Baron. We go 0, the T, 1 is the H, 2 is the I. And if you remember that extra digit that you have to add, okay, anytime you're using the string index, you always add a digit. If we only go to 2, it only gives us the first 2 digits. Okay, we have to add that +1 anytime we're using the index. Okay, adding the +1 gives us the first 3 letters. All right, if we leave the second spot blank, it just prints from the spot that you created. So if I want to print from there, it's going to start us at the 3rd spot, 0, 1, 2, 3. It starts us there, and then it just, because I left the second spot blank, it just prints the whole thing all the way through. Okay? And that's what's happened down here. We go to spot 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I switch it to 2. Okay, and it just prints out space class. Okay, that is how our substring works. Now the confusing one. Index of. Let's go back in here and read the index of. Method returns the index spot, so that means it's going to return a variable of the beginning of the string in the current string, or -1 if it's not found. So it finds whatever you put in the brackets, okay, in here. It looks for that in the string you tell it to look for. Look for it. And when it finds it, it gives you the index point. Okay? So if I say in this example here, system.out.println message1, so we're referencing the string named message1, we're using the method index of, and we're asking for the first instance of is. Every time I prep this lesson, I think this is the third year in a row, I prep this lesson and I cannot figure this one out. It says is. It's looking for the first instance of is. Is right there. So I count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should return 5. Every single time it returns 2. And then I burn 15 minutes racking my brains trying to figure out why it's returning 2. And it drives me nuts. So I'm going to show it to you so that it doesn't have to drive you nuts. Wait. Oh yeah. Okay. So I am saying here, output something from message 1. I'm using the method index of, and I want you to look for is. So it is going to output the starting point of the first instance of the word, of the character is. Okay? So again, I go through here and I count to 5. Is here. And I don't know why I'm so dumb, because I do it every year. I almost have to go get help every year to try and explain this to myself. That's not the first instance of the word is in that string. The first instance of that is there, 0, 1, 2, in spot number 2. Okay, and I do it to myself every year, but that is what it's going to print out when I run my code. Okay, it prints the 2. Now this one is looking for, in message 1, the word capital HELLO. That does not exist. It does not exist in that string, so it returns a -1. Okay? This one is same thing. It's now looking for in message 2. It's looking for capital HELLO. The first instance of that combination of characters occurs at spot 0 in the index. With me?
Yep.
Okay. Because now we're going to go on to compare to, and that one can be worse. Okay. I think I covered everything in here. All right. Compare to. Compare to, I'm going to run that one. All right, so our first line. Our message is just hello with an exclamation mark. This one we're asking it to compare to. If we go back to what the definition of compare to is, the int compare to returns a negative value if the current string is less than the other string, a 0 if they have the exact same characters in the same order, and a positive value if the current string is greater than the other string. That took me a fair amount of time to figure out. Okay? How do you determine if one string is greater than the other string? Well, you have to go to the numeric value based on the alphabet. All right? So this one returns a 1. So if we go back to here, it says it returns a negative value, returns a 0, and same order. It returns a positive value if the current string is greater than the other string. All right. So what it's saying, it's returned the current value because it returned a positive number. This string is greater than this string. All it means is alphabetical order. If you're organizing these words into alphabetical order, okay, this one doesn't have an exclamation mark. This one does. So if you organize these into alphabetical order, the exclamation mark and the rest of the statement of there is going to put that below. Alphabetically, we would put this one ahead of that one. And it's just by 1 spot because the exclamation point, I guess, equals 1 spot. All right? That might still be confusing, but let's go on to the next one. Okay, the second one returns a 0. System.out.println message.compare to hello with an exclamation mark. If we go back to our definition of compare to, it returns a 0 if they have the same characters in the same order. Okay, that one's simple. This one does have the exact same characters in the exact same order, so it returns a 0. Okay, and here's where I got stuck the first time I learned this. We throw the word and in there. Now it's comparing and hello, and it gives us a +7. That means and is 7 whatevers above or greater than hello. And the 7 comes from the first digit, the first character in each string. And is an A. So if we go B, C, D, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Just look over here at my hands. I've got 7 fingers up. Okay? If I counted the space between the A and the H, it's 7 spots. So and is 7 something's greater than hello because of that first character within. That's what the compare to does. All right? When we go down to zoo, it's -18, meaning the other string is 18 spots greater than zoo. And if you count H to Z, that's 18 spots. Okay? Are you with me? Good, because that confused me for a very long time. All right, and then this one here, we're asking for dot equals. And this one, we're going to get a little bit more into the dot equals in terms of how you relate the two. It's saying, do these equal each other? Okay? And this one does, because it's got the exclamation mark and the capital letter. This one does not, because it's missing a capital letter and an exclamation mark, so we get the false return. Okay, I believe I covered all of that in there. This is my strings are immutable part. You can't change them. You're actually creating a new string. Okay. What is the value of string 2 after the following code executes? String 1 is baby. With string 2, we're saying we want to grab from string 1, but we want to create a new string starting at spot 2. So we go 0, 1, 2. And we end up with by. Am I right? Okay. The method substring will return all characters starting the index of the string that you called it from. What's the value of the answer after the following code executes? So if we look at the compare to, it's saying string 1 compared to string 2. So we're saying that string 2 should be more, and now I can't remember. Oh, I got it. Gosh, I'm smart. Okay, string equality. When we use the operator equals, it's used with object variables. It returns true when the two variables refer to the same object. With strings, this happens when one string variable is set to another, or when strings are set to the same string literal. Okay, so when we look at this example, if you run the following code, we have string s1 equals hello, string s2 equals by, string s3 equals s2. Now print out string s3. Okay, it's going to print out by. That's the value of s3. So since string 3 has been assigned to copy the value of s2, which is an object reference to the string, it has the same characters. So S2 equals S3 will be true since the two variables refer to the same object. Okay? S2 dot equals S3 will also be true because it's the two variables referring to the same object. When we use equals to test if two strings have the same characters in the same order. Only use equals to test if the two strings refer to the same object. Okay, and I have a better example of that coming up right here. If you use the new keyword to create a string rather than just using the string s1 equals, okay, it will create a new string object. Okay, so look at this example here. We've got two hellos. I believe that's this lesson. Okay, so string s1 equals hello. I'm going to to print this one out. String S1 equals hello, string S2 equals bye, string S3 equals bye. So when I ask it to compare 2 to 3, it says they're true. If I change the name of this to bye, string 1 is equal to bye, string 2 is equal to bye, and now I compare string 1 and string 2, I am going to get a true, because the same characters are in there when we use a string literal to create that. Okay? Now, this is where the object reference comes in. Or sorry, the reference variable comes in. I create the same two strings, okay? But I create them using an object reference rather than a string literal. So I now have string S4 is equal to string hello. String S5 is equal to new string hello. I've called them the same thing, and now I want to compare the two of them. So I say system.out.println S4 equals to S5. And I get a false. Because equals equals is testing, it's not testing if the characters are the same within the string, it's asking if it refers to the same string. When you create things by using a string literal, it's going to create the string by. When I create a second string and call it by, the computer looks at it and goes, oh, it's a string literal. He already created one called by, so I'm just going to use the same string again because I don't want to create another one that has the exact same characteristics. So when I do this, it still says, yes, that's true. When I do this, I'm actually creating a completely different string object that has the value hello. When I use equals equals, it checks and it goes, no, those aren't the same. I created a whole new string for 4 and a whole new string for 5. Okay, now when I run are equals to, I get an error because that's not right. I want to go to string 4 and string 5. Let's get rid of this one. Okay, so when I run this one, when I use the dot equals to, it gives me a true. For the most part, I can't think of a time when you're going to want to find out if two strings refer to the same object or not. But I can think of a lot of times where you're going to want to know if the characters within the string are the same. So this purpose of this lesson is to teach you to use dot equals rather than equals equals. Okay, because there are instances where the characters could be exactly the same and it'll return a false to you. Okay, that's the purpose of understanding that. Okay, and then I have the same example down here. I use string literals to create these two strings. When I run these two print statements, I get a false and then true. Oh, sorry, I get two trues because it's a string literal. Moron. Okay, you with me with the equals to versus equals equals? Okay, back to the lesson. I think I covered all of that stuff in there. If there's stuff that's not making sense, please come and tell me. Concatenation. Computer scientists and programmers, they love to put fancy words on things. Concatenation just means combine, bring things together. Okay, so if I create a string, one that's called happy birthday and another one that's called Jose, and then I want to concatenate them, I can just go string result, that's my new string, equals whatever the value of start is, plus a space, plus whatever the value of name is, and then I print result, and I get the result that I want. Okay, so I get a fancy letter there. That's just a concatenated string. For this one, okay, I'm going to use the string message, which equals 12 plus 4 plus 3. I'm concatenating these statements. The issue is these are numbers, and this is a string. When you do this, it's just like adding integers and doubles. It sees that you have a string, and it says, I'm going to make the whole thing a string, because you can't add a string to a number. So when I run this program, I get 1, 2, 4, 3. If I want this string added to the sum of these numbers, I have to throw a bracket around them. I hope. I don't know if I'm right. Whew, I am right. Okay, now the computer can follow BEDMAS. That's not what it's called anymore, is it? Is it called something else? The brackets, whatever, exponents all the way through. The computer can do this operation because there's no string inside these brackets, so it can say, oh yeah, 4 plus 3. I can do that. So it does 4 plus 3 equals 7, and then it combines the string and the 7, but it still converts the 7 to a string. This is not 127. You're not going to be able to go and add it to anything because all it is a string in the computer's eyes. Okay? I believe that's all that page has. Okay, user inputs. This will probably anger you if you can remember back to how we did inputs in Python. We just said input, please enter a number here. It's a little bit more involved here. When we want to use a return method, the return methods perform an action and then return a result to the location. Okay, so if I create an integer called number, it has to equal my keyboard.nextInt. NextInt says the next int entered in whatever this object is. Okay? So in order to return that, I have to create that object. You remember when we created a string object, we said the name of the string equals new string. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to use the scanner, and we're going to say scanner keyboard equals new scanner system.in. And I have a better example in here for us to cover. So the first thing you have to do when you're using user input is you have to import the scanner. The scanner is something that looks for your keyboard and allows the user to use the keyboard to enter the value of a variable. Okay? So I have to import the scanner, import java.utility.scanner. I have my class, I have my main, and I say scanner keyboard. So this is the name of the keyboard. This is the name of the variable I'm going to use, and I'm going to say equals new scanner system in. So system in just stands for system input. It's just a way for the variable to have a value assigned to it rather than just having the programmer assign the value. Okay? Stick with me. Now I'm going to say, because we need prompts because the user's stupid, I say system.out.print, enter an integer. And then I say int num is equal to keyboard.nextInt. What this does is it finds the keyboard and it says, oh, okay, keyboard is a scanner system input device. I'm going to use this object to take whatever's typed on the keyboard and put it into the value of num. And then I'm going to assign that value to that variable. Okay, so I have int num. The value of int num is going to be keyboard.nextInt. So once this line of code runs, whatever number gets entered into the keyboard is going to be the value of num, and then we're going to print num. Okay, so here, this runs, it says enter an integer. Okay, when you do this, you have to make sure that your cursor is not in your code window. It has to come down here. I'm going to say 5. That's an integer. I enter it, and then it says system.out print num. I have a value of 5. Here's where the user being dumb messes stuff up, okay? Because we end up with not having this line. Now nothing's happening. The program's running. You can see it's running, but nothing's happening. So I go down here and I enter 5, and it prints 5. But without this prompt, the user's just sitting there not knowing what to do. Okay? I'm not going to describe all these because I'm running out of time, but the same thing happens for a double. The same thing can happen for a string. The same thing can happen for a full line, and we'll get more into what lines do later. Okay, but that is how the user can enter a string or an integer or a double or anything like that using that scanner keyboard equals new scanner. Okay, common mistakes and a quick review. I'll let you go through that one on your own. All right, I'm going to touch on that assignment real quick. I don't have a ton of time, but I want to give you the gist of what you have to do in that assignment. So if we come to assignment number 7, string basics, what I want you to do is I want your code to remove the word very from I am very happy, and I want your code to replace LOL with the actual words laugh out loud. What I don't want you to do is I don't want you to just make a substring of I am space and then another substring that you concatenate of happy exclamation mark. I want you to create something that identifies the word, say a variable called target, identifies the word very, and then it prints the statement out and it says I am, it'll print up to the target word, and then it'll start printing again at the end of the target word. Okay, and I have this assignment finished. Is it this one? Okay, I have it set up right here, and I'll probably go over it again at some point, but this is the string. My target is very. I have a position for index of my target, so it gives me a integer of where this line starts. And then when I use my string new message, I'm going to substring message 1 from 0 to wherever POS is. Okay, position. Position is going to be the beginning of our target word, and then I'm going to add the substring of position plus target length. Remember, target length gives you the last index point of that word. It gives you the end of it. Now, I don't have a second spot in here. So this is just like doing the substring I don't have that one. It's just like doing my substring. If I only wanted to print from A to the rest of the line, I would just say 0, 1, 2, 2, and then I'd leave the 2 in there. But if I wanted to print from M and very, I would say substring 2, comma, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus 1 is 9. I would say 2, comma, 9, and it would print M very. This thing is going to do the same thing. The first substring prints from the start position to wherever the target word starts, and the second substring is going to print from that position plus the end of it. So this gives the starting point of the second substring as wherever the target word ends, and it'll print out I am happy. Okay, and it's basically the same thing with this one down here. You can submit this one by just doing 2 substrings, but it's not going to be correct, so you won't do as well. Okay, I understand that that's a little bit confusing. You'll have some time to work now. I'm probably not going to do a lesson tomorrow. I most likely won't do another lesson the next day, but that'll give you a chance to figure out how